Chapter 18. "You can't do this, Mr. Crumb," I gasped. "You can't." I pressed myself against the back of the chair, as if somehow that would save or protect me. "They fear what would happen if you escaped or were discovered. I told them you would not be found here until it was too late, but they do not wish to take a chance. We wouldn't tell anybody, even if they found us." He lowered the pistol. "Please do not make promises that you would not keep. I have no choice." In the background, I heard the sound of an engine starting. They were leaving. "Look away, please," he said softly. "No, I won't," Jack snapped defiantly. "I'm going to look right at you. It would be less difficult. Less difficult for you." I started to bite the inside of my cheek, but stopped. I didn't want him to see that. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. I couldn't watch any more. I closed my eyes and looked away. Bang! I could smell the smoke from the gun. I dared to open my eyes. When I looked, I could see that the shot had knocked my brother and the chair over. As blood pooled on the floor, I knew that I had watched my brother take his last breath. Mr. Crumb turned to me. He put one finger to his mouth. He shot into the floor beside me. What was he doing? He slowly started to walk backwards, and then he was gone. My entire body started to shake as I sat there wondering what had just happened. Oh, wait, sorry. There's something completely different that happens. I just sort of made up that last part. Let me just go back and retry this again. I started to bite the inside of my cheek, but stopped. I didn't want him to see that. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. Mr. Crumb raised the gun and walked another step closer to Jack. Jack thrashed against his ropes, desperately trying to free himself. I couldn't bear to watch. I looked away and closed my eyes tightly. An explosion, a shot, and then there was a second and a third and a fourth. I opened my eyes, terrified. Mr. Crumb was standing with the smoking gun in his hand. He had one finger held in front of his mouth, and Jack was still there, still alive, staring wide-eyed. "Not a sound," Mr. Crumb whispered. "Not now and not until you are sure we are all gone. If they return to the house and they find you alive, they will kill you both and me as well." He turned and walked to the door. Suddenly he stopped and turned back around. "I am a good German. We do not kill children or women." Before I could even think of answering, he was gone. I heard his feet move quickly across the floor, the door opening and then closing. Within a few seconds, I heard two car doors slam, another engine start, and the sound of tires against gravel as they left. Finally, there was silence. "I think they're gone," I croaked. Jack whimpered in response. Despite being tied into the chair, he was still shaking violently. "Are you all right?" He didn't answer. "Jack, are you all right?" He nodded his head ever so slightly, and I could see the tears flowing down his cheeks. I couldn't remember ever seeing Jack cry. He had it pointed right at my face. I was looking down the barrel, and then he shot there, Jack said, motioning with his chin. Just off to the side, I could see 4 holes in the wall, the places where the bullets had hit. "He made it sound like he'd killed us," I said, so they could hear the shots outside. "I could feel the bullets pass by, the heat and the smell. I thought I was dead," he sobbed. "But we're okay," Jack shook his head. "We're not okay." "Sure we are. They're gone and we just wait until somebody comes to get us." "Who will get us?" he hissed. "Mom or the police or..." I suddenly realized that they'd only come if they were called, and now Mr. Crumb would not be free to call anybody. He couldn't very well excuse himself to make a call to free 2 people he'd killed. "We have to get away or we'll starve to death or die of thirst. Somebody will come." "Out here, way off the highway, miles out of town?" Jack demanded. Then we have to get out of these ropes ourselves. I could have slipped out of the ropes you tied, but then Crumb tightened them so much that I can't move at all. Then we have to use something to cut them. I looked around. The back window is broken. How about a piece of glass from that? That wouldn't work. What we need is a knife or... Hey, where's the knife he used to cut the rope? Jack asked. We both turned to the counter. There it was, still sitting there, the sharp blade shining brightly. "If I can get close to it, maybe I can knock it off somehow," Jack said. He started to use the very tips of his toes to inch the chair forward. I watched as he made painfully slow progress across the kitchen. Bit by bit, he finally clunked his legs right up against the counter. What do you do now? I asked. I've got to somehow rock myself so I can lean up on the counter. Maybe I can reach it with my hand and knock it closer, or even onto the floor. But even if you can do that, what good would it do? I asked. I don't know. Maybe we could use it somehow to cut the ropes on our feet. That still wouldn't get our hands free, I pointed out. But if our feet were free, we could walk out to the highway. I don't know. You got any better ideas? Jack demanded. We can't just do nothing and wait here to die. I shook my head. I can't think of anything. Then just sit there and let me take care of things. Jack pushed up on his toes and the front legs of the chair rose off the ground. He flattened his feet and the chair rocked forward. He did the same again, rising a little bit more, and it rocked even farther forward. Again and again he bucked and rocked, and each time he seemed to get higher. Just a little bit more, he grunted. He rocked backwards and, ah! Jack yelled as he fell over, landing on the floor with a thundering crash. Jack, are you okay? I yelled. I'm okay. I smashed up my hands, but I'm okay. I think, but there's no way I can get up. He rolled back and forth, rocking on his back and then tipping onto his side. If you can knock the knife down here, I think I could get it now. It might even be better that I fell down, if you can get the knife. But if you couldn't get it, how can I do it? I don't know, you're lighter. Maybe it'll be easier. In any case, you have to try. But what if I tip over like you? Just don't. But if I do, I asked, then we'll be in even deeper than we are now. We'll be as dead as if he'd shot us. I took a big breath. Jack was right. There was no choice. I used my toes the same way I'd seen Jack do it. I was surprised by how easily I could move. Maybe there was more play and the ropes looped around my feet. As I inched forward, the chair creaked noisily. I crossed over to the counter just beside Jack. He looked up. You can do it, George. I wasn't as confident as he sounded. Slowly, I raised myself up on my toes and rocked backwards. My stomach rolled forward as I went back. I could perfectly picture in my mind toppling over like Jack. I let go and rocked forward. Do it again, Jack ordered. I pushed up on my toes and then let go, and I rocked forward and onto my feet. I was all bent over, and the chair was on my back in the air. That's great, Jack exclaimed. Can you throw yourself up onto the counter? I'm not sure, I said. The chair creaked and twisted under me. It sounded as if the whole thing might just fall apart. Maybe there was another way. I'm going to try something else, I announced. What? What are you going to try? Watch. I shuffled around so that I was facing away from the counter. Carefully, I took a little hop, moving forward on both feet at the same time. This was definitely a faster way of moving. What are you doing? Jack demanded. You have to get the knife. I looked back. He was arching his neck, trying desperately to watch me. I'm not going to try to cut the ropes. I think I can smash the chair that's holding the ropes instead. I hopped again and again until I was right in front of the stove's stone chimney. It was rough-hewn rock and it stuck out from the wall. Slowly I turned around so that I was facing completely away from it. Then I shuffled backwards until I could feel the bottom spindle of the chair pressed up against it. What are you doing? Jack yelled. I took a little hop forward away from the chimney. Here goes, I said to myself, and then hopped backwards with all my strength. The chair thudded up against a brick. I wiggled all over. Was it any looser at all? I couldn't tell. I moved forward again and then threw myself backwards, and the bottom spindle hit against the stone. Is it working? Jack asked anxiously. I'm not sure. I flexed my leg muscles, trying to force them farther apart. I could feel the chair giving ever so slightly, the legs bowing out a little. One more try. I moved farther out from the wall and then hopped twice backwards, and there was a tremendous crack. I looked over my shoulder and down. One of the spindles had broken in two. It's through. I've broken the bottom spindle, I yelled. Great, keep going. If I could break the side spindles as well, then maybe all the legs would just fall off. I turned to the side, hopping sideways, and throwing myself into the chimney would be harder, but I thought I could do it. I tried to turn when I felt myself going backwards. My whole weight fell onto the back legs of the chair, and they shot sideways. I felt myself tumbling over, and I braced myself for the fall, and I screamed as I landed with a tremendous crash. George, I'm okay. I fell over, but my feet are free, I yelled. The parts from the bottom of the chair, legs and spindles, were seat were scattered around me. My feet were in loops of rope still tied to the legs, but they were completely free to move. Unfortunately, my hands were still tied behind me to the upper spindles. Can you get up? Jack asked. I'll try. I rolled onto my side and pushed off so I was on my knees, and then I struggled to my feet, the legs of the chair jutting into me. I'm up. I just have to get my hands free. I moved over and rammed myself backward into the chimney again. The jolt registered through my entire body. I did it again and heard a crack, again and again and again, and then two of the spindles dropped to the ground. I furiously wiggled my hands, and ropes got even looser as other pieces of the chair fell, until finally there was nothing else. I walked over to Jack, my hands free of the chair, but still tied behind my back. I can get the knife now, I'm pretty sure, I said, towering over him. I backed up to the counter and awkwardly jumped up onto it. It groaned and gave way slightly, and for a second I thought it was going to collapse under my weight. I looked backward to the knife and reached out until I could feel the blade against my fingers. I pushed it around slightly so I could grab it by the handle. I've got it, Jack, I've got it. Can you bring it down here? I'm not sure, but I figure it would be better if I just keep it here. I think I can cut myself free. Carefully, I moved my fingers along the handle until I was holding it right where it met the blade. I shifted it more into the fingers of my right hand and pressed the blade forward until I was sure it was touching the rope. Then I started moving my hand slowly, hoping the edge of the knife was cutting into the fiber of the rope. Is it working? Jack asked. I can't see, but I think it is. It must be. I doubled my efforts. My hand was starting to hurt from the exertion and, ouch! I yelled as I dropped the knife to the counter. What happened? I cut myself with the knife. Are you okay? I can't see. I can feel where it cut in. I could also feel my hands getting wet. Was that my blood? If I turn around, can you look? I can't see anything from here. Besides, we haven't got any time, Jack said. It's getting late. It looks like the sun is almost down. I looked across the kitchen and out the window. It was getting darker. The sun was just peeking out from between some trees. It wouldn't be long until it set. That had to make it after 9 o'clock, maybe later. And if it was going to be hard finding help now, I could only imagine how much more difficult it would be in the dark, miles away from anything or anyone we knew. I felt around with my fingers until I found the knife again. I grabbed it and carefully moved it forward until I had it where I wanted it. At least I'd already cut partway through the rope, assuming I could start cutting in the same place again. I transferred the knife to my left hand and felt around with the fingers of my right to find the cut. I moved my finger up until I discovered a spot that was frayed. Could I move the knife over to my right hand and still keep track of where it was? I tried to picture it all in my mind as I transferred it over. I started sawing away at the rope, this time pulling my left hand away to avoid cutting it again. I strained against the ropes and my hands popped free. I did it, Jack, I did it. Help me up, please, help me up. I climbed off the counter and dropped to his side. I was just going to start cutting when I glanced down at my left hand. There was a long, nasty-looking gash and blood flowed freely from it. Come on, George, what are you waiting for? I'm sorry, let me just get my legs free. Quickly, I cut the ropes, holding my legs to the remnants of the chair. I then grabbed Jack by the shoulders and lifted. He was heavy, and I wasn't sure if I could do it. I groaned as I heaved him upright, with the legs of the chair back on the floor. Cut the ropes! I reached back, grabbed the knife from the counter, and slipped it into the loop of rope holding his wrists. The blade bit into the cord and sliced through it effortlessly. It snapped, and Jack pulled his hands free. That feels so good, he said. Here, you can cut the others, I said, offering the knife. Can't, he said, shaking his head. My wrist. Even in the last fading rays of light, I could see that his right wrist was swollen to twice the size of the other. It hurt when I fell. I think it might be broken, Jack said. He cradled the injured wrist in the other hand. Can you cut me free? I bent down and cut the two ropes holding him to the chair. Jack staggered to his feet unsteadily. Do you know what time it is? He asked. The sun sets about 9:30. That gives us about an hour until the attacks take place. We have to get help. But what about your wrist and my hand? We'll wrap something around your hand to stop the bleeding. And your wrist? Nothing. We'll do nothing. I'll have to wait. Let's get out of here. I never want to see this place again in my life, I said. Can you get the door? Jack asked. I pulled it open and started to walk out. Wait a second. Jack suddenly stopped in his tracks. Take one more look back. I strained my eyes to see the outline of the features of the dingy little kitchen. What did he want me to see? This was almost the last thing either of us ever saw. Just think about that for a second. He paused and let his words sink in. Now, let's go. That's the end of the chapter.